But when we talk about pop culture, we're going to be looking at what is the popular culture in whatever place and time we're at. Ooh, are those Cool Ranch Doritos?
You're not gonna share.
I know.
That was like the most awful face you've ever made.
I'm really hungry. But yeah, so Cool Ranch Doritos, big thing in pop culture, and what was that, like 2016? I don't know when they first came out. They were super popular. Takis, I don't remember. I remember Takis were like a huge thing for a while and then kind of like died off. The pop culture is just whatever the popular culture is at that specific time in that specific region. So like Nikes, Air Jordans, stuff like that, those are a huge part of American pop culture. If you have Air Jordans, you are the coolest kid on the block, right? But it is just different contemporary culture that is made popular through mass consumption. So I'm trying to think of what they play in like regards of like pop music. Like Ariana Grande, she is pop culture. And MC Hammer back in like, what was that, the 90s? Nicki Minaj is part of pop culture. Kanye West is pop culture. What's popular in movies? Game of Thrones was a big part of pop culture. We had a lot of memes that came out of it, especially after that really terrible finale. So many memes. There's also like folk culture, which you think of more like traditional folk arts, folk songs, dances, stories, where they're not controlled by industry and it's not really driven by profit. So pop culture is controlled by an industry. So like the Hollywood movie industry, the music industry. I had another thought in my head and then it totally just like right out. But it's typically driven more by profit. So Nicki Minaj makes these kind of, sometimes controversial songs because they make her money. You're laughing because you're just like, I couldn't even name one of her songs, but yes.
Wow.
It took me like 6 months to actually hear that because they never played on the radio here. So I'm just like, what is everybody talking about? And I listen to it, I'm like, oh.
You missed it the one night.
Yeah, nope. I'm probably glad I missed it.
No, it was fun.
But the 4 characteristics of popular culture, so it's produced by a specific industry within typically a capitalist system. So North Korea doesn't really have any pop culture because they don't have these big industries that produce these cultural stories or these cultural products. You see North Korean propaganda, but you don't like see North Korean dramas. You see a lot of South Korean dramas, a lot of Chinese dramas, but you don't get like North Korean produced movies. They don't have that pop culture. Any pop culture that they get, they have to import very secretly so they don't go to prison camp. But it is different from culture, from folk culture, because it is kind of more profit motivated. But pop culture does exist everywhere. Even if you do have a very closed off country like North Korea, there are still pop culture elements from the US, from South Korea, from China that manage to slip through the cracks because you can't prevent people from wanting entertainment, right? People want to be entertained, they want to have fun, and therefore they will find ways to get access to this popular culture. It fills that social function, and that social function being, it helps people in societies bond and have things similar, right? So how many of you guys watched Game of Thrones when it came out? Okay, so a couple people, we could use that to bond and make friends with each other. Or if I say, okay, how many of you guys listen to, Ariana Grande? Or how many of you guys like memes? Yeah, memes really help bond people together. Any of you guys remember 2018? But some of you guys are like, no, we blocked out 2018. I remember like this meme all the time of like the people like Photoshop like into like stick figures. But you know, and when they changed IHOP to IHOB, like that was a big thing. But we can bond over and say, oh yeah, I remember that, you know, really funny meme from when Endgame come out. They were doing all those edits of all these like, you know, poor Peter Parker, you know, going away into dust, or, you know, other people just like going into dust. And like the red, or was it like black and blue dress versus like gold and yellow? Yeah. I'm sure we all saw that and we're like, okay, like what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's weird.
So like there was one time I saw the dress on the colors, but
Was it like, I don't know.
No, they're like flip flops.
So we're like on right there.
The gray and like
Oh well.
No way.
You see pink?
Yeah,
Okay, we're gonna argue about the color, so we're gonna not. But you know, stuff like that, it provides an opportunity for a dialogue. Be like, okay, Brent, what the heck? How do you see pink? Or what the heck? How do you see teal? But it's that social function of helping bring us together. The US, honestly, we are probably one of the most prolific, if not the most prolific, exporters of pop culture. We have the Hollywood movie industry. I don't know if you guys saw or not, but I saw a headline earlier this week that they re-released the Blue People Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, in China, and it has once again retaken the top grossing film of all time, beating Avengers Endgame. Yes, they re-released it in China, and they made a crap load of money off it again. Huh? Is it? I don't know. I've kind of lost touch with the movie industry because I can't go to the freaking movies. I know, but they should reopen soon. Woo! Yeah, Americans, we export a lot of culture elsewhere. People don't always like that. I don't know if you guys know, but I think it's actually Qatar in the Middle East that is now having a huge obesity problem because Americans have exported McDonald's and a lot of our other fast food overseas to the Middle East. And, you know, Qatar is a very, very wealthy country. So they see being able to have, you know, the McDonald's as, you know, a sign of wealth. So they go and they eat that and they eat a lot of this fast food. And now they're starting to have this obesity problem, you know, diabetes problem that they haven't really had in the past because we have exported our food culture, our popular food culture, over there to the Middle East. You're right, should it be a Wendy's instead?
Well, if you think about it, like here we eat like beef, chicken, you know, pork on a daily. Well, in Vietnam, that's like
their special time food, yeah.
That's like their stuff.
Yeah, like meat is super expensive to produce. We have just gotten really good at producing it.
People that own dogs as pets are the people who are like high class.
Because otherwise you're eating your dog.
It's so weird.
Yeah, there was actually a really interesting video that there was like a former North Korean army officer, a woman who was reacting to a day in the life of a U.S. Army woman, and she's like, "Why is the dog in the house?"
Yeah.
And it's like, because the dog is a pet. But, you know, our pop culture differs across other cultures. So like if you're over in the Middle East, you know, your pop culture, your music videos are probably not going to have half naked women in it like ours do. And I'm not going to pull that up because who knows what's going to come up on that YouTube video. But it's just, it's different. It's not the same. Our pop culture is not always accepted or what other cultures want or what's ideal for them. And this term, cultural imperialism, it's really sometimes just regular imperialism. So a culture exporting so many goods or cultural products that it just kind of takes over. Oh, I was like, that was not a good facial expression. Are you okay? But this kind of relates back to our globalization that we talked about in the first couple weeks. But you know, our world is getting smaller because we can interact with other people. But because of the pop culture that we view, it affects how we see other people. So how many of you guys remember all like the James Bond movies? Okay, who are typically the bad guys in James Bond? Well, it's typically the Russians. But yeah, the rich Russians, I guess, okay. So a lot of James Bond villains are like the rich Russians. Because a lot of the James Bond movies were made during the Cold War. And that was the enemy that the US was fighting at the time. So the pop culture was showing us how we should view these people from this other group. If you look at more modern movies from, you know, the 1990s up to now, a lot of the bad guys in the movies are Middle Eastern. Because it's, you know, it tells us how to think about these particular groups of people. And because that is the enemy that the US has been fighting basically since, I think it was the Gulf War in the 1990s. We've pretty much always been engaged in the Middle East since then. But it's no longer the Russians, now it's the people from the Middle East. And, you know, in 15 years, you know, it'll probably change again to say, okay, well, now this is the group of people that are the bad guys in the film. If you look at movies elsewhere, it's the Americans who are the bad guy because they have a different cultural perspective of what's going on. But, you know, that shows us what the power relations are and how we should think about certain types of people. A really funny one I see is I really love Godzilla, but the joke is, you know, it's funny how in the US radiation creates superheroes, while in Japan it created, you know, Godzilla. Yeah, it's like, I wonder what could have happened that, why does Japan view radiation as bad? Well, because we dropped 2 nuclear bombs on them. But our US pop culture is very widely circulated. Pretty much anywhere you are, you can get access to American pop culture. It's very pervasive. The Hollywood industry spends a lot of money on making sure it does. American movies are actually really, really popular in China too. I don't know if it's just because we have like super basic plot lines and like lots of cool explosions or what, but it is. We have all these Jackie Chan movies and Bruce Lee. Or was it Brendan Lee or Brandon Lee who was in The Crow? I don't know. He's dead, so I guess it doesn't matter. But you know, we have to think about how is our movie industry showing us, and then how are Americans being shown in other pop cultures? I really want to show you guys this clip, but I'm pretty sure there's like some cursing in it. I know, but people respond to things different ways. Any of you guys seen the movie In Bruges? Okay, so this is a British movie. Fair warning, I'm pretty sure there is cursing in it. So, but this is not an American-made movie, but this is a representation of American tourists in Bruges, Belgium. I think this is a British-made movie though, so fair warning, it's definitely like British humor. But this is how they are representing American tourists. Or maybe it's but that's how they like that. I think it was British produced film represented Americans. So how do Americans represent other people? So, it's not always bad, it's not always good. I mean, of course that, that's specifically done to make it humorous for the British who see American tourists all the time and are like, yeah, we've definitely seen people like that, even if not everyone is like that. But one thing to kind of think about and ask ourselves is, what is the implication of the US being one of the most dominant media producers and pop culture producers in the world? Well, there's other countries that are definitely not a fan of American produced pop culture, right? And it can definitely cause tension. Imagine if you played WAP in Saudi Arabia, where women just got the right to drive by themselves or to be able to learn to drive. Probably not going to go down very well, right? And obviously, American companies are trying to make money by selling and pushing their products. So if they're pushing that in a place like Saudi Arabia, it's not going to just go well for US-Saudi relations. So can you guys think of any pop culture influences from other parts of the world, or any pop culture products from the specific culture that you guys might be doing for your ethnography?
Spanish music is really popular in the US.
Selena? Don't laugh at me, Brianna. Were you laughing at my dancing?
Well, because she was in Texas.
Yeah, but she sang in Spanish.
Yeah, but she also supposedly came from Mexico.
But yeah, or like Mexican food.
Yeah.
You know what? Like, what about like when you go to like this art place and they play like that super like relaxing music or whatever, and they just talking about it in the street, even though it's not.
Like your nice like yoga meditation music. You're like, oh no, it's like the nice Indian music, and you're like, I'm pretty sure this was made in the studio in like Burbank.
Yeah, exactly. So, they make it
Bollywood movies. I don't think Bollywood's very popular here.
I mean, it's popular in the chicken.
Oh, I haven't thought about that movie in like at least a week.
Well, there you go.
What else? Specific holidays like
Oh, you know what? That's actually got brought up a really good thing. So May 5th, we celebrated Cinco de Mayo. Well, in Vietnam, they celebrate it on the day where you cleanse your body, so you have to eat a really sour plum. It like cleanses your body, like so like it takes like all of like the parasites out of you, and but you have to eat it on that specific day.
Chinese New Year or like the lunar cakes and stuff like that. What about from this half of the room?
Oh, see, when I was talking to
Mhm.
like, well, this one, I guess, was because across the country, the lines on the team, they really sing with their podcast. You literally buy a Walmart, but they all wear them, so we started wearing them, I guess.
Yeah, and if that's yeah, and if that's popular in Hawaii, then that has now infiltrated your baseball team because other people have been doing it. Americans, like if you ever go really like overseas, particularly to Europe, you won't see like anyone in like a baseball cap because that is very much like American. But you do start to see it more because of American movies and American film and like pictures of Americans you see on the street. I've had a couple people in my classes who have been really into like K-pop and like Korean music and Korean dramas and stuff. Some really big like BTS fans. I don't know all the lingo. So yeah, I don't know what all the lingo is, but you know, that's Korean pop culture that has transferred over here to the US. They sell, you know, sold out shows and make millions of dollars here in the US when how many Americans speak Korean and can actually understand what they're saying about?
I was gonna say, yourself.
Yeah, but they're
Making fun of us. We would never know.
yeah, but they're attractive young men and women singing and dancing, so people are like, whoa, we can get behind that. So one thing that's kind of interesting is like American wedding dresses actually. So American wedding dresses tend to be white, correct? In a lot of like Asian cultures and stuff, white is typically more of a color of mourning and like a funeral color. But you know, the white American, you know, tradition of a wedding dress is kind of it's spreading across the rest of the world. So you're starting to see more people around the world wearing a white wedding dress rather than like the traditional like red or yellow or whatever color is more traditional in their culture. Because they see all these American movies of these brides getting married in these beautiful long white dresses. Okay, drink time. 30-second break. What time is it? Oh. Okay. But that cultural imperialism, it's just the domination through the spread of cultural products. So as American cultural products spread, they, you know, they are produced well, they have been made well, so they tend to become popular elsewhere. But it could be media, so controlled through the media, like the movies, or it could be technological forms. So if you think about it, China probably has the, you know, hands down electronic, what is the word I'm thinking of? Yeah, production control over pretty much everything. And if it's not made in China, it's made of one of the in the neighboring countries, probably by a Chinese company. So they definitely do have some dominance in like the electronic world, even if the US might be more dominant in like the media form. I think a lot of that stuff we already kind of talked about. I think so. But when you guys are doing your ethnographies, it is really important to look at both like more of the folk culture about, you know, what's more traditional, what they used to do, but also look at the pop culture. You know, some of their pop culture, it might be really, really Americanized. Or if it's in like Vietnam, it could be more French pop culture because the French colonized Vietnam. So maybe they listen to a lot of French music or watch a lot of French TV. Maybe they're reclaiming their Vietnamese heritage and making more of their traditional style art and movies. But most of us consume popular culture, but not a lot of us, particularly in the US, resist popular culture just because it's what we've grown up with. Most of us are Americans or have been in the US for a decently long time, enough to be exposed to the culture, so that most of us, we don't even think about it. I may not like, the song WAP or whatever, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna like start protesting it or whatever, because it's just like, that's just, that's American style of music. Like, that's what people do. If I don't want to listen to it, I'm just not gonna listen to it. But I do have that privilege of being able to say, I can change the radio station. But when we're consuming popular culture, some of the most popular TV shows are like reality TV. And I will admit, I do love me some super crap reality TV. Like every Wednesday I sit down and I watch My 600-Pound Life. I like it too. Like it's the only cable television I watch. It's hilarious. You should give it a try. I mean, it's really depressing. Okay. Yeah, but it's reality TV. Reality TV is popular. The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Survivor. We like to see people in situations that we think are real, even though, spoiler alert, most of it's still relatively scripted, or they edit it in a way that fits the storyline they want to tell. But what kind of identity might be served by these shows? Well, it helps us bond. If Brayon and I both really like watching The Bachelorette, we might be able to say like, oh my gosh, did you see, Sharon last week, how she treated Joe, and, man, she's really such a bee. I do not like her. Like, whatever.
What is he doing?
Yeah, what is he seeing her? Like, is it just that dress? Is it like the plastic surgery? What? But it's connected to how we view ourselves in relation to our culture. So maybe it is because we all bond over liking to see people, overcome adversity in Survivor, or we're all thinking, hey, we all want a super attractive guy like, Joe from season 4 of The Bachelor. I have no idea. I'm literally just making all these names up. I've never seen The Bachelor. But it helps us shape who we think we are and who we want to be. Part of this might be, pop culture, like beauty standards too. Maybe I see someone, really, really beautiful on, I'm trying to think of another TV show or reality show. On Sons of Anarchy. Okay, and I'm just like, wow, she is gorgeous. Like, I love her sense of fashion. Like, I want to look just like her, because I think she's the ideal beauty or whatever. I might try to strive for that, even if I know it's TV. People are edited, or Instagram or TikTok. You can have filters on videos that move with you. So I could go on TikTok and I can find a filter to edit my waist so that instead of 29 inches, it's like 24. It's not real, but I could do it, and it might make someone else think, oh, I want to look like that with a 24-inch waist. Kudos to you if you could have that naturally, but I can't. And then some people tend to resist popular culture. Like if you don't like super like sexy songs or things that you think demean women, because there are definitely songs out there that are demeaning to women and men, then you can just avoid it and resist that. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Nicki Minaj. I'm not going to seek out her music. I'm not a huge fan of like rap. Not going to seek it out. Not a huge fan of country. Not going to seek it out. So don't look so sad, Tanner. I'm sorry, but like heavy metal is the best genre, so like heavy metal, like Behemoth. You guys probably don't even know who that is. Maybe I've aged myself. But, you know, people avoid things they don't want to listen to. And if you are someone who's concerned about, you know, people being stereotyped in the media, then you might not seek to listen to that. Like, if you don't want to watch, you know, a television series where like, well, they stereotype baseball players as just these dumb jobs, when we know that, you know, they're not just dumb jobs. Like, it's like, well, we're just not going to watch that because it's not a true representation of baseball players. You know, they can be intelligent, they can be nice, and you guys are. And then, of course, as people move between cultures, you have, you know, how are they perceiving the culture? How are they perceiving how their culture is represented? So if you have someone who immigrated here from Russia in 1999 and they're watching all these, you know, James Bond or spy films where the Russians are always like shown as really, really negative, like money hungry, like, oh, we're out to kill democracy. They're probably not going to feel very good about being, oh yeah, I'm from Russia, or I'm from Saudi Arabia, or I'm from Kuwait, or insert whatever here. So it is pretty strong in influencing how people who are mainstream into that culture, people who've been around it a lot, how they think about other groups of people. You know, if I watch a whole bunch of movies or TV shows that always show people of Hispanic or Latino descent as, you know, dumb or lazy, I might start to think of them in that way, even if, you know, I know that's not true, because, you know, you go out in society and you meet people who are Hispanic and Latino who are, you know, intelligent and hardworking and, you know, just everyday people, as everyone is. So, and then, you know, if we go and travel internationally, you know, we have to kind of ask ourselves, do television shows show how it really is like to live in the US? How many of you guys have seen like when you were in high school or whatever, watch things like High School Musical or like the Disney Channel shows, and you're like, that is not how high school is. Like, high school is, you know, either a lot better than that, or high school is like, whatever noise that was. So they might not always represent American daily life well either. Like, I'm sure most of us went, like, all of us went to high school, I guess, in some way, shape, or form. But, you know, I'm sure most of us probably didn't go out partying and drinking every weekend at 15, like they show in a lot of the high school movies. I mean, people do it. I mean, it's been done. It's not unheard of, but I'm pretty sure most people do not do that, or they don't do it as much as people show. You know, if you're in college, most of the time you're probably not partying every weekend and getting drunk down at Shane's. Because when would you have time to study? How would you pass your classes? It's like very dedicatedly. But, you know, it's not always like what it shows in the movies. And we know that because we live here. So we have to say, okay, well, when they show what the daily life is like in Egypt in the movie, it's like, okay, is that really what the daily life is? People are probably not walking their camels 24 hours a day, or, you know, whatever. You know, most places in at least like the big cities, you know, big cities are big cities. They have sky rises. They have people working 40-hour-a-week, 35-hour-a-week jobs. They have high-speed internet. They have cell phones. You know, not all of like Africa's just a huge desert where nothing happens. Like, so. But pop culture helps reinforce stereotypes that have been shown to us before. So some things to think about as we wrap up, and as you're thinking about your ethnography and the pop culture and the folk culture of your specific place that you are doing, or your specific group. So how has that influenced the culture and people's identities there and their worldviews. So do they have a really negative view of a certain group of people because of how the pop culture has influenced it? How has the media portrayed your particular culture? Or how does that particular culture portray other groups within media? If you want to resist popular culture, when do you do it and why? And then how might you be able to be an advocate for people whose voices aren't heard in popular culture, or if someone's trying to, oh, here, look at this script for this screenplay. It's like, you're being kind of racist, or you're being kind of stereotypical. But, overall, just be a reflective consumer. So think about what you're watching. Because, TV will show us mixed up demographics. How many of you guys can name probably 10 different shows with cops in it? Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do? Yeah. But there's lots of movies and TV shows that show, police officers. And you might think, oh, well, there's a lot of police officers in the US. Really, there's not. There's probably not as many as you think there'd be. If we look at like Thatcher, town of 5,000, we probably have like 5 cops. And I could probably point you out where each one of them lives. I go a lot of places and I'm just like, oh. And also because one lives literally just right down there next to me. So don't speed down there, I'll find you. But, there's not as many cops as we think. There's not as many thieves and robbers and bad people in the world as we may think if we watch a lot of cop shows. If you're walking down the street at night, chances are you're not going to be mugged or anything like that. Because, it depends on where you're at. Like, honestly, yes. There's a ghetto in Stafford? I don't know. Obviously, that's a part of Stafford I don't really go to, I guess. But, just be aware of what you're watching and what you're consuming and, how and why. So any questions about that before I take attendance? Any thoughts? No? Okay, well.